Welcome to Two Couples Coaches podcast, where certified relational life coaches Bev and Suzette guide you through the highs, lows, and in-betweens of love and relationships. Trained by Terry Real and the Relational Life Institute, Bev and Suzette help couples and individuals create deeper connections. Whether you are in a relationship that spans many years, navigating a new relationship, or simply seeking better ways to communicate, this podcast is your weekly roadmap to love, deeper connection, and relational growth. So now, please welcome the hosts of Two Couples Coaches, Bev and Suzette.
Hi, Suzette.
Hi, Bev.
Welcome back to another episode of Two Couples Coaches, the podcast where we dive into the heart of what makes relationships thrive. Today, we're talking about something we see all the time in our work, but I think you probably agree with me, Suzette, that what's reflected in the rooms that we see people in is probably what's reflected on the outside. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
So, what we're seeing, a big phenomenon is people chasing gratification instead of growing into a deeper relational joy. And don't worry, we'll talk about what all those words mean. I know they might sound like a lot, but as Terry Real says, relational joy is not the high of self-medication or acting out. It's the quiet contentment that comes from true connection with yourself and with others. So we'll explore what all of that means, how gender can shape how we deal with pain, and how self-esteem isn't about perfection. It's really about self-compassion. So should we dive right in, Suzette, or do you want to add anything before we go into defining exactly what do all these fancy words mean?
Yeah, I just want to point out that this is such an important topic, that this idea of self-gratification versus relational joy. Like you said, we'll talk about what that means, but this is so important. Even just this week, I was with clients, and this topic just comes up over and over and over again in different forms. So I'm really glad we're talking about it.
Can you speak a little bit more into that? How do you see it with your clients?
So self-gratification is really about, it's the losing strategies that we've talked about before in one of our previous episodes. It's the withdrawing because that feels better in the moment, or unbridled self-expression, just saying what you, without filtering what's on your mind, or trying to control. That's all about kind of gratifying, seeking the pleasure of the moment, I feel like. And so that's the self-gratification part, and it's really destructive because relational joy is more about the thinking big picture. What do I want to create long term? And that might be more uncomfortable in the moment than self-gratification. So it's this tension of, I want to do what feels good in the moment versus thinking long term, what's actually going to help me be connected and experience relational joy. And there's always that tension as humans, because
Right.
we are pleasure seeking beings. We seek pleasure. We're wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And so it really creates this tension in couples. It's interesting.
Right. I love that way that you saw it, because I was thinking more in terms of rage, acting out, could be infidelity. But let's dive in and see what are these terms that we're talking about. So pleasure. We're going to talk about what pleasure actually is. And it's a feeling of happy satisfaction and enjoyment. It's not something you can necessarily plan. It's just a feeling that comes over you and you know, oh, this feels good. Do you have would you add to that, or?
Yeah, pleasure. And again, humans, we are wired to seek pleasure in different forms. We have a lot of brain chemicals and dopamine and things that our brain, when we experience pleasure, that our brain is like, yes, we want more of that, do that again.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of different forms for pleasure, but we are wired to seek pleasure.
Right.
As humans.
And sometimes we're wired also, or conditioned, that pleasure isn't something that is our human right. It's really
Mhm.
such a basic human Right. So let's just break it down a little bit more into there's emotional pleasure, that feeling of being loved, seen, or understood. And I know whenever I ask my clients, and as I'm sure you do, what we call the miracle question, right? If this session were to go well, if this coaching would go really well, what would you get? And so often I hear, I don't feel seen and I don't feel understood. So that kind of pleasure is denied. And that's really a repeat of what people want. I want to be seen for who I am. I want to be understood. And then there's the relational pleasure or joy from a deep, meaningful connection with others. That kind of just goes on and on. I like to think of it as Thomas Hubel talks about that you have this kind of relational joy and where you can rest. You know you're secure in these relationships that go out this way, and then you can become who you're supposed to become because you rest there. Whereas so many of my clients are so constantly, their energy goes into the relationship struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes up all their energy. They're exhausted, they're worn out. And that comes in all other forms. It seeps into all other parts of their lives. How do you see it?
No, I agree. I think more of if we're just talking about kind of this relational pleasure, to me that's more of like, yeah, big picture, long-term goals versus more of the immediate relief. And we experience this as humans all the time. We like the immediate relief of like, say, like, oh, this food would taste so good, but the big picture is I want my health to be a certain way, so I'm not going to eat this hamburger because I have a different long-term health goal. So it's kind of the difference between bigger picture long-term goals that don't have the immediate pleasure, and that's why they're so hard. It's often the immediate pleasure that's in that moment. It's kind of short term and it feels so good that it's sometimes hard to not indulge in that and think bigger picture, think longer term instead. So we do that with dieting and health, right? A workout, that's hard. But the bigger picture gratification, the bigger picture goal is my health, which will feel good. And so that's how I think of relational joy. Relational joy is like the big picture, like what am I going to get from being connected and having a relationship, like you said, that I can rest in, that energizes me. That's kind of the long-term goal. And often the short-term kind of relief and gratification, the things we do really get in the way of that. And that's the problem.
I love your example of the hamburger. In that the work that we're doing here is to bring it up to consciousness. And I know for me that very often I would just eat that hamburger and then think about my health afterwards. Like, did I really need all that?
Mhm.
And that's such a great example because this work is all about becoming more intentional, and it's not easy. So Terry makes that distinction between gratification, which is quick, intense, often feeling flooded with pleasure, like a hit of sugar or a binge, um, an affair, having the last word, needing to be right, perfectionism, a lot of the losing strategies that you mentioned earlier. And you can see they come with different levels of intensity. And he makes a distinction between that and relational joy, which is, as you say, it's a bigger picture goal, it's slower, it's deeper, and more sustainable satisfaction that comes from connection, integrity, and love, and feeling that you are enough. And I like to say to couples, it just feels like coming home. You can rest there and you get this inspiration of who you are, who you want to grow into. It's a place of security. It's not necessarily a place to be confused with safety. Relationships aren't always safe. Relationships take vulnerability, take risk, but it's quieter, it's less flashy, um, and it's deeply nourishing.
Yeah. I like
Um,
to think of it as it's more of a discipline. Relational joy, kind of the bigger
mm.
picture goals, that takes a lot of self-discipline. For example, if my kind of long-term goal, I'm training for like a little mini triathlon right now. So
Oh,
that's what
lovely. I've
if
done
my long-term goal was like, I want to run like a full triathlon, like, I don't. I'm just using that as an example. Um, that would take a lot of self-discipline in maybe, like waking up early to make sure I get the workouts in and arranging my schedule and prioritizing other things so that I could get the satisfaction of having gone through the training and the process to complete that, right? Like it's kind of a bigger picture. Like I want that. And I would have to have a lot of self-discipline. I feel like relational joy, getting to that point, that restful, nourishing place, that is the long-term goal that requires self-discipline to get there, and not indulging in the self-gratification of the moment, which in relationships, there is so much self-gratification, not just the losing strategies, but yeah, like getting the last word in, like you said, just doing all of the things that feel good in the moment, needing to be right, needing to have things done my way, being snarky, being sarcastic, or avoiding conflict. All of those things kind of feel good in the moment, but they are deterring us from like the long-term goal, which requires more self-discipline. That's
Right.
how I
And
look at it.
I love your example of the triathlon, which again is intentional, and it calls on you to be present. It calls on you not to escape. It's so much easier, right? I would imagine, to stay in bed an extra hour, then get up and put
Mhm.
on your running shoes. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what real intimacy brings. It brings a deeper joy. I just want to maybe define quickly again what intimacy is. I'm not sure if we've actually defined it. I always think of it as, I call it EVA. E for empathy. Boy, do I know what it's like to have to get up early and put on those running shoes. I might not be doing that, but I know what it's
Mhm.
like. Vulnerability. Do I feel safe enough to share with you? I really want to run this triathlon. I had a client who actually also ran a marathon or a half marathon, and she didn't tell anybody in her family until she did it.
Oh,
She
wow.
just said to her husband that day, and she said, because I didn't want that pressure of what if I don't do it? So that's the vulnerability piece if we're talking.
Mhm.
And then there's accountability. And all of that together brings intimacy. And a lot of the times I find, especially the accountability piece, can be missing in that intimacy piece. But that's what brings the deeper connection. And as Pia Melody says, intimacy is the intersection between truth and love. And it heals by increasing our connection and closeness.
Yeah, and when you think about it in those terms, like those are the ingredients needed for intimacy, the empathy, vulnerability, and accountability. Well, it's the indulging in the self-gratification of the moment that gets in the way of all of those things, right? Like if it feels better to lie because then I won't get caught, that's self-gratification. That's really diminishing the accountability in the relationship and harming the long-term goal, the intimacy, which is, the relational joy, kind of when you have all of those ingredients, the accountability, the vulnerability, and empathy. So I think it's so important just to, yeah, what am I doing to indulge in self-gratification that's getting in the way of these things, and how can I be more disciplined towards the long term?
And just to before we go on our commercial break, I actually have clients now where the one is lying and it's costing them thousands of dollars because it's
Mm,
like not paying bills or insurance and this kind of thing. And it's costing them that closeness,
yeah.
because the trust is all worn out.
Mhm.
So let's transition into, you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we'll be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hi, so we're back and we're talking today about the difference between long-term relational joy and short-term gratification. And the long-term joy that intimacy brings can sometimes have some barriers to it. And we define these as we look at 3 preconditions that keep people out of intimacy. I'll just go through them and then we can jump in a little bit and explain what they are. So untreated psychiatric disorders, self-medication issues, and acting out, sexual or aggressive. Do you want to give a sentence or two about them, or do you think it's kind of self-explanatory?
I do just want to say, again, if you look at all of these preconditions to being able to have relational joy, they all very much are grounded in self-gratification, because self-gratification always gets in the way of being more disciplined and looking at long-term goals. So things like untreated psychiatric conditions, there's going to be impulsiveness there. There's going to be inhibited abilities to be self-disciplined, right? And to do the things that are required for healthy relationships. And the same with, acting out behaviors. Those are impulsive. Those are inherently grounded in self-gratification, whether you're sexually acting out, physically acting out, verbally acting out, right? You cannot have relational joy if you are stuck in gratification of the moment. And all of these preconditions are very much grounded in that. Same with substance use, like addictions, self-medication. Addiction is very, it inhibits the parts of your brain that are disciplined. Substances do that. And addictions make you very impulsive. So that's how I think of them.
Right, they pull you out of relationship. They're either used in terms of helping you stabilize yourself, where you can't get that in relationship, or they keep you out because, as you say, they're impulsive and you only need your needs met. So what we say is it's not that we won't see people doing couples work. We will accept couples to do the work if they're attending to those issues, but we will look for them. A new couple, she straight away said, I'm completely abused in this relationship, verbally abused. So it's not that they can't necessarily do the couples work, but if that needs to be attended to, as well as we need to see if she's coming with a whole wagon full of resentment, that's going to also keep her out of the couples work. So sometimes that all needs to be attended to before the couple is couple work ready.
Yeah. You can't be working towards relational joy when there's these other things that are really blocking progress towards that.
So let's have a look. What tip we could give our listeners tonight? Let's learn to recognize the pull of self gratification. Um, the question to ask yourself is, what am I really needing right now? What do I need right now? And I know for me, Suzette, I was thinking about this because I know next week's talk is all about self care. For me, sometimes I just need to switch off. And that means to go lie down and just shut my brain in the day because I suppose our work is pretty intense, right?
Mhm.
And if I can tune into that, even for just 5 minutes, take that break, switch
Yeah.
off.
I think whatever you can do to help to get yourself kind of back in your we call it a wise adult. You can call it lots of different things, just into more of your logic brain and less of your in the moment reactivity. Whatever you can do to slow that down. And like you said, do I really need this right now? Is this really helpful right now? Is this
Mhm.
getting me closer toward my long-term goals? That's also an important question to ask. Is this moving me closer towards a connected relationship, towards relational joy, or is it keeping me farther from that? And that requires like slowing down, like you said. So much of what we do is just automatic and fast and reactive. And instead, slowing down and really think about what do I actually want long
Right.
term, and is this helping me or hurting me to get that?
And also, you talk about things being so fast. I was talking to my husband about this. Do we ever have a time in the day when we're not being stimulated? Even when we go to the bathroom, right? Might be listening to something in the car. It's like, wow, right? Quickly reading an article. Um, so I was actually saying to someone the other day, he was telling me that he works in a lot of different places. On any given day, he could be in at least two places. I said to him, what do you do on your drives? No, he's always listening to a podcast or he's learning something. I said, do you ever just take quiet time? He said, no, never. It could be related to his age, is man closer to your age. Whereas I sometimes I like that quiet time already for
Mm-hmm.
myself. So just on that tip mode, addictions are often an attempt to regulate emotion and
Mm-hmm.
escape pain. Not bad intentions, but it's an outdated tool. It's outdated in that we want to sit with ourselves and say, wow, I used to overeat. It's not relevant for me now. If I want to be healthier, what can I do instead?
Yeah.
So let's transition to gendered responses to distress. Because that's what we're talking about. Why is it so difficult to commit sometimes to the deeper relational joy?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you want me to jump in? You want to jump in?
No, I can just think of myself, as a female, and this is not all females, but this is common for a lot of females, is to kind of withdraw, go quiet, internalize. And again, this is not everyone. I'll just speak for myself. For me, that is what I tend to do, right? But that is grounded in the gratification of the moment. If I don't speak up, then I don't rock the boat, and then everything's okay. And okay feels good in the moment. But that's not helping the long term goal of a healthy relationship where my voice is heard and my husband and I can collaborate, right? So it's uncomfortable to speak up in the moment and say like, oh, this isn't working for me, we need to do something different, right? That is terrifying. It's more gratifying, that short-term gratification, to just be quiet and not rock the boat. So I think that's an example of kind of a gendered response, or maybe we could even just call it different. There's different responses
Right,
to what we do to manage discomfort. And for me, as a female bodied person, I tend to just get quiet and not
right.
rock the
I
boat.
love
But
what
that's
you said. In
why.
your case, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
What you were saying in your case, it's okay with you. But what I find, and I'm one of those female body person, I would be angry, resentful with the
Mhm.
silence. It wouldn't be okay.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah, it's not okay for me because I do experience that too, which is why I have to push myself to
right.
speak up and create, to do the things that will lead to me being well within myself and also a healthier relationship. It feels good temporarily, but yeah, eventually the resentment builds and the anger builds for sure.
Right. And you can see that it's a younger part of you. It's needing something, some nurturance, or for your husband to come and chase you and bring you back. It's something that you actually need to attend to rather than the people outside of us. And then we see men who tend to respond to distress, whereas we internalize a lot, women, it's very true, or female body people, male body people externalize their pain. They can act out, be more aggressive, self-medicating. I mean, we know that more testosterone in the body, people with more testosterone in their bodies are more aggressive than those who have less. So that's what the science shows. But we do tend to see those gender differences. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's socialized too, right? Of what's acceptable or socially acceptable for men to kind of deal with discomfort more externally, self-medicating, acting out, getting more aggressive. It's more socially acceptable for women to, internalize it and not do it. So yeah, and again, that's not true for everyone. There are plenty of women who kind of deal with that discomfort in more aggressive ways and self-medicating, all those things, and plenty of men who will internalize and go quiet and those things too. So
For sure. And I love what you brought up, that the socialization. I sometimes hear, you need to fight back when you've been bullied at school, or if somebody says something that's, not acceptable. They're being socialized into those roles.
yeah.
Don't say.
Plus, and not just like cultural socialization, but our family of origin really also models how you deal with discomfort, how you gratify yourself in the moment, right? If you come from a family where there's drinking, you saw people drink as kind of their mode of self-gratification in the moment, numbing themselves, not dealing with things, then that might be how you learn to deal with it. Or if you've only seen people internalize and never speak up as a way to kind of self-gratify in that moment, then you might do the same thing. So there's so many factors that come into play as to why we seek pleasure in the ways that we do, why we try to gratify ourselves in the moment in the ways that we do.
Right. I love that you brought that up, our families of origin, because we tend to, the conglomerate that we take in is we model as well as we react to. So I would never do that. My parents did that. And then unconsciously we model. Unconsciously we seem to model, and more consciously we tend to be reactive. I don't want that. So I love that you pointed that out. But why we're bringing this up really is that it's good to be aware of these patterns. It's good to be aware that this is how you respond in relationship. Because this is where conflict comes in with couples, where the mismatch is, where the wounding is, that, matches or comes up against your partner's wounding. Where, as you said, one partner may pursue relief and the other might go silent or spiral. And it's really important to recognize, to try and sit with yourself and recognize your own distress response, not as a flaw. It's what I hear clients often say, I'm so sorry I do that. It's not as a flaw, but as an adaptation. It's here where you'll use the losing strategies. It's what you had to adapt to, the craziness that was going on when you were growing up. And to become aware of that.
Yeah, and noticing is so important. What do I do to indulge in self-gratification in unhealthy, unproductive ways that are taking me farther from my long-term goals that require more self-discipline?
Absolutely. So we'll just, before we transition to the commercial break, I just want to bring up that a relational ultimatum with your partner is not a punishment. Maybe we'll come back and talk about it because they're urging us to go onto a commercial break. So you're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV, and we will be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break. Don't go anywhere.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, so we're talking about long-term, joyful, deeper connection versus immediate gratification in relationship. And just before the commercial break, we started going into when a partner is more out of relationship, out of intimacy, we can present, if you like, a relational ultimatum, which is not a punishment. It's if you, for instance, start going to AA meetings and curb your drinking or stop your drinking, I will be leaving. It's a consequence. Nature doesn't have punishments. We always say nature has consequences. That, in fact, is a boundary. That's stating your boundary. That's boundary work. When you give over a relational ultimatum. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is so important. It's important to not just throw out these ultimatums all the time, right? We're using them because sometimes that can also be a self-gratification. Like, I'm going to threaten the relationship. I'm going to do that because that feels better in the moment than actually like sitting in the discomfort of or working through this. So I think it can go both ways. But if there really is behavior that is happening that is really getting in the way of working towards more relational joy, being self-disciplined to do the things that are required for relationship. If there's things that are happening like addiction, like acting out behaviors, then yes, absolutely. You need to say, like, we cannot get to our long-term relational goals if these things are happening. So like change has to happen or else I'm out of here, right? Sometimes that is necessary. And that's what is going to create change.
Right. And I love that you said about using it as a kind of a threat. Become aware. What's the energy behind what I'm saying? And can I, will I really do this? I sometimes will ask my clients, do you believe your partner when they say that? Oh, they've said this since the day we got married. Mm-hmm. So I love that you highlighted that, to become aware with, can you put that line in the sand or not? And that's also okay. It's okay because it's your life and your relationship. So let's give a couple of more tips of what you can do. So relational mindfulness is a technique that helps you practice pausing and thinking, is what's coming at me? Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? It goes this way in and it goes out. What I need to say, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? I know for myself, I sometimes will jump into teaching mode. My husband needs me to teach him something. And he will very quickly turn around and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry I brought this topic up." And I'll be like, "You're so right. Why did I think that him sharing whatever he was sharing needed a teaching mode from me?" He wasn't asking me. He was just trying to share something. So when he'll point that out to me, it's my ability then to take the pause and say, "Wow, take accountability. You're right. I can hear what I was doing. Please continue like sharing that with me." And then
can I jump in and just say, like, I love that example as someone who also loves to jump in and teach people, lecture people. I think part of relational mindfulness is just note that noticing to slow down. Like, ooh, does this call for more restraint in this moment? Because again, if we just leave ourselves kind of to go with our own impulses of the moment, it often is not going to help us reach relational joy. Our impulses are often about ourselves, what feels good to us in the moment. So that mindfulness helps us just to pause. Like you said, is this needed? Is it kind? Is it even helping? Or do I need a little more restraint on my impulses right now, so that because what is this helping me or hurting me to get to relational joy in our relationship?
And another strategy, and I'll admit that this was, and I hope it was, and it no longer is, but being concise will get your message across much more clearly. So instead of going, like I have a client, we've spoken about this, and he said to me, for 45 minutes, she went on and on and on, and I just don't know how to ground myself. I don't know what to do with it. It's just like a tsunami coming at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get nowhere. So if you can think of one or two sentences that you want to make the request, ask for the change, and give your partner the chance to respond.
Yeah, so true.
And then, of course, there are the many grounding techniques. You can find them on YouTube: breathing, naming sensations, safe imagery, many, many things that you can do. There's one client said to me, I sit down when I'm in conflict with my husband and I want to talk to him. Sitting down grounds me. And it was beautiful that you could name that.
Yeah, anything that helps create that pause between what your impulses are urging you to do in the moment and what is actually going to be more beneficial to the relationship.
Absolutely. So, in order to do all this, in order to have the boundary work and to really get to that closeness, one of the things that Terry Real also speaks about is self-esteem, which is, in essence, I do it this way because it's a spectrum and it intersects with boundaries. But it's a spectrum of, firstly, what is self-esteem? It's the ability to hold yourself in warm regard, even while acknowledging your imperfections. I hear that word, I'm not perfect, I'm trying to be perfect, so often. I always say just to hold yourself in warm regard for your beautiful human flaws, because we're not supposed to be perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments that you'd want to add on about self-esteem?
That's what leads to so much of our numbing behaviors and needing gratification in the moment, is when we start to feel bad about ourselves or frustrated with ourselves or upset with ourselves. Then, of course, because again, we are wired to avoid discomfort and seek pleasure. And so when we are too hard on ourselves, that is uncomfortable, and we might engage in numbing behaviors to kind of that indulge in that self-gratification of the moment. And that's going to harm the relationship. So yeah, absolutely. Being compassionate toward yourself as a human, that's the natural struggle of being human, being flawed, still being very kind to yourself. So helps to kind of ease that discomfort and help you to stop before you engage in that numbing behaviors.
And to really work at holding yourself, I have the same value and worth as anybody else. Excuse me. I've often said I might be a better swimmer and you might be a better runner. It doesn't make me a better person. I might be a better swimmer than you are. It doesn't make me a better person than you are. We have the same worth and self-value. And to really think on those points, to really take pause in relationships. This is the work of relationship. Everybody says, what is the actual work of relationship? It's all these skills and tools that we're speaking about. And it's that voice inside that says to you, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm still worthy.
I love that. I can't emphasize enough how relationships change by just being aware of what you are doing in the moment. Like this, and I'm speaking for myself here too. The more I am aware of what am I doing in the moment, am I indulging in self-gratification behaviors that are leading me further away? Am I engaging in losing strategies? Am I being hard on myself and then numbing out? And those are the things that when you can shift what you are doing in that moment towards more disciplined actions that are probably more uncomfortable for you. Discipline usually is uncomfortable, right? But when you can do those things, it's leading you closer to feeling that and experiencing that relational joy and having a thriving relationship.
I
So
love
much
that.
self-discipline in relationships.
Sorry. What did you
I
say?
was
Sorry.
just that there's so much self-discipline required to have healthy relationships. Healthy relationships require so much
Well, as we
self-discipline.
always say, marriage is for adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love what you're saying, though. It's so lovely. Connection to relational joy is what you're saying is really powerful. You can't be present to others if you're busy judging yourself and numbing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be present to the other if you're so busy in your head with yourself all the time.
Yep.
So another tool or tip that we would go with is to invite our clients to do this, and we invite you, the listeners, to think of your child version of yourself. And can you offer that child version tenderness? Can you get in touch? What do you need right now? What do you need from me right now? Because that's where healing really comes, where we can meet ourselves with compassion instead of harsh criticism. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and also just being compassionate toward yourself as a human being. Like it is hard to experience discomfort. Relationships are hard. Being in connection with others are hard. Feeling feelings is hard, and just offering kindness to yourself. That yes, this is tough. I find for me personally, the more that I do that, the more that I say like, yes, this is tough, and give myself some kindness, then I don't fluctuate. I'm able to stay more aware and more disciplined towards making the choices that will get me closer to.
And the kinder we are to ourselves and forgiving will be to others, because that's the whole part, that it starts with us, begins with us. And what I'd like to invite you is to not think of dramatic change, but micro moments of connection. And what helps me really is gratitude practice. And I think I've spoken about this a few times in our talks together, that I do pause during the day and at the end of the day to think about, wow, what am I grateful for? And it can be just little things. It could be to do with my partner, and it could be just things that happened in my day. So gratitude practice to notice the micro shifts and changes.
I love that. I know there is a ton of science to back that up, that gratitude is immensely powerful for our brains. So I think that's always a good tip. Don't forget about gratitude.
Get it into your day. Yeah, go, sorry.
I just had one more thought about this idea of relational joy. Is it's not like a cruising altitude. Like we get there and then we've made it in life and we don't. It's an ongoing, like relational joy is an ongoing goal that we always have to be working towards. It's not like you make it, right? It's an ongoing effort. So just wanted to bring that up.
That's great. You're watching Two Couples Coaches on Bold Brave TV. That was a great piece to put in, Suzette, before we transition. And we'll be back in 2 minutes after the sponsor break. And we're open to your questions. Come on in. We'd love to answer them.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
So we are talking today about relational joy versus self-gratification, the difference between the two. And of course, we want to be working towards relational joy, which is a much more disciplined, long-term approach instead of doing the things that feel good in our relationship in the moment, like getting the last word in, putting your partner down, withdrawing, avoiding conflict, trying to fix or control the other person. All of those are actually moving you further away from relational joy. So what are your thoughts to kind of summarize some of these things we've been talking about, Bev?
So to be aware that addictions, which are one of those preconditions to keep one out of intimacy and connection, often mask, just become aware, unmet childhood needs for comfort, attention, safety. And the work of Ed Tronick, for those of you who don't know, he was one of the first psychologists to put a camera in front of mother and baby interactions and record mother and baby interactions. He highlighted for us the bliss a baby feels when they're being nursed or fed, held, and having eye contact with their primary caregiver. And it's what we search for again and again in our adult world. We search for that bliss and that wonderful feeling. And the natural rhythm of relationship is every relationship goes through harmony, the dance of harmony, disharmony, and then repair. And disharmony is really like the dark night of the soul, and we'll do almost anything to feel better again. And that's where we can turn inward and say, what do I need here to help me get back into that harmony? That would be one aspect of what we've spoken about, I think.
Yes, absolutely. The things we do in disharmony are often grounded in self-gratification instead of getting back to relational joy, right?
And as you said, sorry.
No, I was just going to say our human brains just really don't serve us well in relationships because the part of our brain that keeps us safe, it's so impulsive. It's all about self-protection. It's all about what do I need in this moment and how can I avoid discomfort? And all of those things are so detrimental to thriving, healthy, long-term relationships. So we really have to kind of rise above that and be aware and access the part of our brain that can be much more disciplined, slower, intentional.
Beautiful, especially in our busy, as you say, our fast-paced world. And the other aspect is it's not about fixing your partner or getting that last word in or the numbing, as you say. It really comes from a quieter power of presence, being in touch, and being deeply connected to yourself, so that you can be more connected to the people you love.
Yeah, I agree with all of that.
And Terry Real, of course, reminds us we're not taught how to love. We have to learn it, and relational joy is the reward. We tend to love, says Esther Perel, as we were loved. Terry will say we tend to hold ourselves as we were held. So what's one small relational act you can try today to get more in touch with yourself, or especially with your partner?
Well, I think it's always just thinking what am I working towards? What do I want and why? Just keeping that bigger picture, the long-term goals in our head. What do I want in my relationship? Well, if I want a healthy, connected relationship, then is what I'm doing in the moment, whether it's like being snarky or not, or avoiding conflict and not speaking up, is what I'm doing moving me closer to what my goals are or further away. So keeping your goals in mind, I think that's a tip that you can do today to help you do your part on your side of the street to work towards relational joy. What about
So
you?
I think I'm gonna give some really get down to some practical tips. You can send a text. You can make sure over a meal today that you make eye contact. You can have a shared laugh. You can put in that expression of gratitude. Somebody was telling me the other day that she actually found, I don't know if it was a YouTube or whatever it was, 7 tips that you should say to your partner every day. And she read the one to her husband, I will never leave you and I'll always love you. She read it to him from her phone. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. She said, I thought he was going to have some bizarre reaction. And he loved it, even though she was reading somebody else's words to him. So anything that you can do, a note, get in the end and do it.
I love that. Agree.
So thanks so much for joining us today. Was there something else you wanted to add?
No, I just enjoyed this conversation. Such an important topic. So
thank you. So thanks so much for joining us today. You've been watching Two Couples Coaches here on Bold Brave TV. We're live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. ET, and you can also find us on all the major podcast and video platforms. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your questions, comments, suggestions for future topics. Our email address will be in the show notes, but it's Two Couples Coaches, that's all in words, at gmail.com. You can follow us on social media, YouTube, visit our individual websites that will also be in the show notes. And there you can learn more about our work. And if you've ever asked yourself, how do we make this relationship stronger, healthier, more fulfilling? This podcast is for you. So thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been Two Couples Coaches with your hosts, Bev and Suzette. Tune in each week as Bev and Suzette share expert insights, have heart-to-heart conversations with guests, answer listener questions, and dive into the challenges and joys of building a life together. Because in relationships, just like in life, growth happens when you show up, stay curious, and keep evolving together. Wednesdays, 12 noon Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.